More on queries and visualizations. Compound and group queries. We have covered several types of queries in the NVivo for Windows Fundamentals and Moving On courses, including the 4 most frequently used, all of which are included in the Query Wizard. On the Explore tab, you'll see that 3 additional query types remain in the Create group. The coding comparison query will be discussed elsewhere in content related to teamwork. In this lesson, we'll discuss the compound and group queries. Compound query. Let's begin with the compound query. First, it's important to note that your ability to create compound queries in NVivo is limitless. By saving the output of a query as a node, or set, or matrix, and using that output as the scope of a future query, you have the capability to create highly complex analysis. The compound query allows you to conduct multiple queries simultaneously, with any combination of text search and coding queries. For example, we might wish to ask where we see mentions of building or construction or related words in all of the content we've coded to either policy or real estate development. Or we might wish to ask the same question, but only looking at the content we've coded at both nodes. Let's try a compound query to get at just that question. In the coding where I've identified discussions of policy related to real estate development, where do I see mention of housing construction? On the Explore tab, I'll click Compound. The default here is to combine 2 text search queries, but I'll change the second subquery here to coding. Now, I'll click the Criteria button for subquery 1 to create my search for words related to construction of housing. I'll set the slider here to include stemmed words so that I can enter house, construction, and build and have NVivo search automatically for housing, construction, and builders as well. I'll click OK and now set the criteria for subquery 2. Here, I'd like to search for content coded at both the policy and real estate development nodes. So I'll choose the radio button for content coded at all selected nodes and click Select. From here, I'll check the 2 nodes and click OK. Now let's look at the options for joining the 2 subqueries. The default setting is to look for the results of subquery 1 near the results of subquery 2. If I click the Options button, I can see more about what near means. If I accept the default for proximity, overlapping, my results will include only those instances where the words I've searched for are appearing within text that has been coded at both of my selected nodes. I could loosen this criterion by clicking here and choosing Custom Context. Now I could choose to include mentions of these words if they come within 20 words of content coded at both real estate development and policy. Now I'll have the option to include content between finds. I'll tick that box as the content between the finds will help me to understand the content of each of these mentions. I'll click OK now and run the query. Now I've created a highly focused search within my coded data. This type of query can be very helpful in the later stages of coding and in writing up my results, when I'm looking for specific quotes to include. I've saved myself quite a bit of time by combining these subqueries into a single compound query. Group query. Now let's take a look at the group query. The group query differs from the others in that it looks for relationships between nodes and sources at a more global than granular level. For example, while in a coding query we might ask to what specific content has been coded for a few specific nodes, in the group query, we're instead asking to see which items have any content coded at these nodes. Suppose I'd like to see which codes have been applied to the interview transcripts by one coder on my team. I'll choose the group query here and keep this look for setting at items coding. Now for scope, I click on the drop-down list and choose selected folders, and then tick the interviews folder. Now, since I'm not concerned with all nodes in the project, I'll click the Select button here to limit the range of nodes to selected items, and choose all of the natural environment child nodes. Now I'll choose one particular coder on my team, the coder Effie Reeves. I'll click Run. I first see just a list of the interviews I've selected. Notice the plus sign here? When I click the plus sign, I'm able to see the nodes coding that interview, as it was coded by Effie. Note that Effie seems not to have coded anything at all at these nodes in several of the interviews. Now I'll click the Connection Map tab to see another view of this result. From this diagram, I'm able to see which codes Effie has applied broadly across the interviews. If I were to generate the same diagram for another coder on my team, I would hope to see a similar pattern. A quick glance might help me to identify some disagreements across the team, or might help me to quickly see which team members have not yet completed coding of the full set. I could use the same diagram to see all coding across a number of interviews, which codes are being applied almost universally, and which are being used more narrowly. You can see that there are many types of questions we might explore with these tools. One quick note on saving group queries. You may add a group query to the project to run again later, just like any other. But to save the output or results of this query, I'd need to export the diagram as a picture by right-clicking in the diagram, or export the summary as a list. Again, I would right-click to begin the export. The default format, .xls, will allow me to expand and collapse the summary just as I can here. Let's look one more time at the types of items we can look for in the group query. How does this differ from what we might accomplish with the advanced find? If we use the group query to look for all cases where the relationship type is married to any other case, the query will yield a list of all the cases we have included in the scope. This is not our result. We need to scan through the list for the plus sign to see any of our married cases. The connection map becomes very useful here to quickly find all those with the relationship of interest. Searching for relationships of this type with the advanced find yields the same answer for us, displayed differently. You'll most likely find that you turn to these queries less frequently than you do the text search, word frequency, coding, and matrix coding queries. Keep them in mind, though. They can often help you through a complex question about your project.